for consideration on the urgent need to address the menace of drug abuse in Nigeria. The Senate is invited to note that Nigeria is currently facing a rise in drug abuse which has reached an unprecedented level, transforming from a mere transit route in the 90s into a country filled with drug abusers and drug traffickers all over its land space. While a population of 30 to 35 million Nigerians spends approximately $15,000 and $30,000 annually on psychotropic drugs and alcoholic beverages, respectively. The Senate is also to note that according to a report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the European Union on Drug Use in Nigeria, about 14.3 million Nigerians between the ages of 15 and 64 are drug abusers. The Senate is to be aware that the report stated that 10.6 million addicts were cannabis users, 4.6 addicts used pharmaceutical opioids, and 238,000 drug abusers used amphetamines. The Senate is also to be aware that the report further revealed that the prevalence of drug use per geopolitical zone as far back as 2017 shows that the Northwest Zone, where I come from, accounted for 12%, which is around 3 million drug abusers. Northeast Zone, 13.6%, which is about 2,090,000. North Central Zone, 10%, which is 1.5 million. Southwest Zone, 22.4%, which is 4,382,000. While the South-South Zone accounts for 16.6%, which is around 2,124,000 of this category of Nigerians. And the Southeast Zone account for 13.8%, which is 1,550,000 drug abusers. The Senate regrets that the main drugs abused in Nigeria are mood-altering drugs or psychoactive drugs, performance-enhancing drugs, dependency drugs, as well as prescription drugs, whose side effects include addiction, trauma, mental illness, and oftentimes resulting in ill health, violence, and involvement in criminal activities. The Senate is disturbed that a significant number of deaths from accidents and violent crimes have been traced to the activities of persons under influence of drugs, especially the discovery of more dangerous substances called kurkura in the north, while in the south we have what we call the mili. The Senate is also disturbed. The Senate is worried that the prevalence of drug abuse in Nigeria is a public health challenge which seems to be on the rise, on the increase, despite intervention by international, regional, federal, and state bodies through laws, policies, and technical inputs. It is also worrisome that the war against drug abuse carried out by the NDLA, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, and other relevant institutions of both state and federal government is not providing the required results. Hence, the need to include special drug education as a compulsory subject in the Nigerian basic education. It is also alarming that the consequences of drug abuse will continue to endanger our national development, public safety, and family system if urgent action is not taken to strengthen existing legal, policy, and institutional frameworks to face the challenges with all sense of responsibility. I hereby move my motion. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
This motion and further crave the indulgence of the distinguished President of the Senate to add that this motion is very germane, especially against the backdrop of the avalanche of the menace of drug abuse and substance abuse across the nooks and crannies of this country. as representative of the people, our primary duty is to ensure and guarantee the welfare of our citizens, that is our constituents. Mr. President, distinguished senators, the menace of substance abuse and drug abuse has assumed a very threatening dimension of threatening the peace, order, and good governance of the country because of the indulgence of the vast majority of our youths in drug abuse and substance abuse, which makes them to commit a lot of atrocities as a result of the influence of the substance abuse and drug abuse. And again, Mr. President, no country will afford to relegate the future of its young ones to the background, because any country that does it against the risks of its own growth and development, because our future lies in our youth, and we want to bequeath a country and a legacy that is enduring for them to take the Nigerian project to the next level. Again, it has also socio-economic dimension. The effect of drug and substance abuse has socio-economic dimension in the sense that the productivity of our youth is greatly affected, with all the attendant and concomitant effect of retarding our economic growth and sustainability. Socio-economic wise also, we are losing a lot of our cultural values, national values that is dear to us as a result of this substance abuse and drug abuse. So against this backdrop, I urge my colleagues to support this motion so that it will see the light of the day without much ado and with the speed of light. Thank you.
Senator Babangida, it is of national importance that we looked at this issue of drug abuse with every seriousness, because today most of our cities and even villages today have turned to be network for selling hard drugs. Our youths in this country, majority of our youths, especially, I can give example with my constituency. If you go to Mina today, it's sickening and very sad. Parents can no longer control their children. The children have become so hardened. Today there are so many streets, innocent people cannot walk freely due to the effects of these hard drugs. Just about 2 weeks ago, a young man who just closed from work and was going home, and unfortunately he fell into the hands of these youths who I will call young criminals, because they are not doing it for any reason. They collect their phones, they stab this young man. In fact, eventually this young man lost his life. They do it not because of anything, just to get another source of funds that they will go and deposit to get more of this substance. As such, I stand to support this, and I believe that it is necessary at this time to put hard drug into our curriculum so that the young children that will grow will be able to know the side effects of this thing, because it destroys. Once you get addicted to it, you can't leave it again. So, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I think it is very important that we here, as leaders and as custodians of legislation in Nigeria, to do something about it and give this an impetus. Thank you, Mr. President.
Deputy Senate President.
I feel it's a duty that I must contribute to this debate because it's very, very important. I therefore commend the mover because the effect, the negative effect of drug abuse on our youth, even adults alike, cannot be quantified. It's a huge, huge element that is causing destruction, unprecedented destruction to the lives of our people. Most of our youth now, so many of them, I won't say most, so many of them are into drug abuse. And when you have a country, in the first place, the youth are our future. The future of every country lies on its youth. And now when you have something that is destroying your youth, it shows that your future is in jeopardy. This thing is everywhere. It's everywhere. Even celebrities, they're into it. Even celebrities, those that are supposed to show good example, lead the way for others to follow, they are also into it. Politicians alike. Politicians alike. And all pass, all spheres of our lives. So, well, NDLA is doing very well, but the motion is a wake-up call for all those that are, you know, have the responsibility of making sure that we deal with this matter, to wake up and make sure they do the needful in getting this matter, you know, dealt with in the appropriate manner. Of course, it's important that we'll include in our curriculum, in our schools, to begin to teach our children from the primary school level the negative effect of drug abuse. We should begin from there. I know in the United States you have courses even in the university that deals with the courses that deal with drug abuse. So we need to put that in the front burner in our institution of higher learning so that people will be aware of the negative effects of drug abuse. You see, wake-up call, we need to make sure that we do the needful. It's a serious matter, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, it's a serious matter. We need to really wake up from the, I mean, it's a sad commentary on the way things are done in this country. Very, very sad commentary. A big nation that human capital now is number one in whatever you think. Any war, any country out in the whole world, any country, human capital is what is in the front burner, is what drives, you know, good economy. And we have an abundant population, youthful population, and we're allowing it to get destroyed through, you know, intake of illicit drugs. It's something that we need to all put our hands together to make sure we deal with it in the most appropriate manner. Mr. President, I so submit.
For me, I've said it all. The only aspect that I want to add is a matter of emphasis. So I want to first of all commend the mover of the motion and those who have spoken. And I want us, distinguished colleagues, to take note of this menace that is about consuming our country. The speakers, distinguished colleagues that spoke, especially what the DSP started bringing out, is the fact that we should face the truth. The issue of drugs, menace, in a society is very dangerous, and it has destroyed many societies. It is hurting the economy of many societies. Even countries like America, countries like UK, youths do certain things under the influence of drugs. And as he has rightly said, that unfortunately, the words of most of our elites are also affected. Fortunately, we have a leadership of NDLA that is very, very determined. Buba Marwa, General Buba Marwa retired, was our governor in Borno State. And all of us here know his determination and capacity and the effort he has put in this NDLA that has turned it around and even given the institution an international recognition. But he is handicapped. He is handicapped. I discussed with him severally, and coincidentally, this is the time to help him. This is the time to get the committee that this Senate has created to sit down with the leadership of the NDLA to know what they need in terms of resources, tools, or whatever, in order to face this war squarely. He also complained about the process that they take. Most of the people they arrest are victims. They charge the victims and they are taken to court for trial. The judiciary delays the trial and they extend the drug business to prisons, which is more dangerous again. So in short, this motion is timely. The Senate needs to intervene seriously. Fortunately, we have a committee. When the amendment, when the prayers is done, it should include sitting down, mandate the committee, which is, although it's their work, to invite the chief executive of NDLA with the view of knowing what he needs in order to make the war against drug in this country more effective. Having said that, Mr. President, I think this motion have been, it's time we look at the prayers, amend it to strengthen it, and pass it, and we move on. I so submit.
My brother, then for bringing this motion. It is quite timely, quite apt, and the Senate needs to do something about it urgently, for the effect of it is gradually destroying our society. Inasmuch as a lot has been said about the effects and what it does to our children, the onus is also on government to make sure that we create avenues that will take away the minds of these children from indulging in this. Our agricultural sector is gradually being abandoned. Children do not even want to go to farm again, even if you create the environment for them. If they go to the farm and work from morning till afternoon, I'm sure they will not even have time to take drugs. Poverty alone is enough to make them do something that will take their minds away. So I'm sure, since this is a government that hopes to, intends to bring hope, renewed hope to the lives of our populace, I'm sure it will create jobs that will reduce this. But one other important thing, sir, there is a drug that is more dangerous than cocaine, more dangerous than the known listed drugs. I don't know the name in English, but it is called zakami in Hausa. It grows wild. It grows wherever there is a dustbin or at the back of our houses. Just a drop of it, if they drop it in somebody's drink and he takes it, he becomes unconscious for 3 days. He urinates and excretes in his clothes without knowing. And it is really, really very dangerous. First of all, the drug agency, the NDLA, had to find a way of listing this drug, because some were arrested for even trying to use it. And when the NDLA officers were consulted, they said it was not listed among their drugs, among prohibitive drugs. So there's nothing they can do about it. This is dangerous. So, sir, I will be grateful if this Senate, under your leadership, can provide an avenue where NDLA can list this drug, so that at least it can be eliminated completely from our side. Wherever they see it growing, they should find a way of killing it, so that they do not even have access to it at all. Thank you very much. I so submit, and I thank you, sir, for bringing this motion to
the Senator now. So we may not even be able to advise. So is there a way you can find out from somebody who is into it's good? No, you Google it in Hausa, you won't get it. So yeah.
I will bring it, sir, and I will make it available to the chairman who is seated next to me.
Stone apple.
Okay. Somebody said it's stone apple. I don't know what that means.
What do you call it?
Stone apple.
Okay, so we can put it in a prayer that it should be listed among the dangerous drugs to be avoided. Can I hear from the Civil Senator Dan Kwambo?
Ibrahim Dankwambo, representing Gombe North, and the chairman, Drugs and Narcotics Committee. Let me thank distinguished senators for bringing this motion, which is very timely now, and which is which has been well contributed by members of the Senate. Like has been said by the whip, the major constraint the agency has is the law that will give it the powers necessary to execute most of the mandate as contained. And most of the things that are listed in the prayer of this paper would have been taken care of if this law is passed. Unfortunately, the 9th Senate passed the law and it was submitted to Mr. President, but very late. So the law has been brought back. We are making effort to submit it. I therefore want to seize this opportunity to solicit the support of members that as we have shown interest, that we should show interest so much in facilitating the passage of this bill. It was passed by the 9th Senate and we are resubmitting it to the 10th Senate for passage. I thank the mover of this motion and members of Senate, and I solicit your support for the quick passage of that bill when it is eventually submitted. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Mpigi Barinada, I represent the good people of the Rivers Southeast Senatorial District. Mr. President, I'm from Rivers State. Mr. President, this motion that has to do with the growth or the death of our youth in our society is very apt. Mr. President, just like my colleague was just mentioning about the names, whether botanical or not getting the direct name of the drugs, these weeds are growing everywhere in our community. Some come in forms of vegetable, and the common pharmacists back at home, they call them chemists. They are also part of this problem, Mr. President. A woman will come from the hospital, from the farm. When this woman returns from the farm, they meet the chemist, maybe they have pains or the other. The story in the community is that let them mix up a particular medicine for them, combination. Most of these combinations they mix for them, they mix with tramadol, they mix with some things, and this woman is just given unnamed prescription. Those things are drug abuse. Mr. President, let me also take us to people that goes to work. For instance, the security agencies that were supposed to actually stop the abuse of these drugs. You see the police at some checkpoints. You see even the NDLA themselves, maybe at an activity point when they are going out. Mr. President, they call themselves high. What are they hiring for? They've taken drugs. If they see something of such nature, especially the police at most of the checkpoints, most of those things are not reported back to the authority that are in charge of this thing. They use it amongst themselves. The major issue here is that in all our communities, we cannot actually account for the number of chemists or drug pharmacies that are there. Most of those areas are where these children, or we call them youth, gets into, and before you know, there's no proper synergy between the NDAA that don't even get to the community. So I would suggest, Mr. President, the issue that is really affecting us is proper administration, and because the NDAA is not getting down to all the communities to really monitor what is happening. Mr. President, I submit that this motion is apt, and we really need to see how we can better the lives of our youth by making sure most of these issues of drugs are properly handled. Thank you, Mr. President.
Jackie Dixon, Bayelsa West. Let me, Mr. President, align firstly with all the submissions so far made, all the contributions made by distinguished colleagues on this very important issue, and I join them also to commend the mover of this motion and all the robust contributors so far. Mr. President, I won't go over what all my colleagues have said, because everyone that has spoken has pointed out the fact that we are facing a national calamity. This is a national emergency, a national calamity, a national time bomb waiting to explode, or it has already exploded. And we are waiting for the full effect of it to occur. What is necessary now is the way forward. What should we do? Mr. President, considering the nationwide prevalence of this menace, because it's happening everywhere, in every community, in every tertiary institution, now even in every secondary school. I hope it's not going on in primary schools here or nursery schools. So it's a major issue across the length and breadth of our country. I will suggest that the enormity of this national situation, this crisis, is beyond what the prayers are asking us to do. I will rather, when we consider the prayers, urge for the declaration of a state of emergency, on a state of narcotics emergency, drug emergency in this country. And we should commend also, I agree, we should commend the present leadership of the NDLA, which by every account seems to be, everybody says the same thing, that General Marwa is giving effective leadership and has taken our national response to this drug crisis to another level. So we should commend him and his officers and men. But we should, in my view, urge the President to lead the challenge. The President of the Federal Republic has to be urged to declare an emergency on this and to lead the national response to it. In every country where this has happened, and we are not alone, the Americans dealt with the opioid crisis. Anywhere you have this issue, the executive must take the lead. And in that context, Mr. President, I will suggest that we call for a declaration of emergency and urge the President to lead, and then we should have a national summit. We should have a national summit on this, so that all the stakeholders, NDLA, the police, the medical people, and the federal government itself, we will now listen to all of them, even beyond what we know, because we are not experts. We are not experts. So it is at the end of that summit that Mr. President presiding here and this chamber will now, as part of one of our most important responsibilities, which is policy formulation, policy articulation, we can now push for necessary actions. At that summit, it will be clear if the issue is funding, because it has to, a lot will have to do with funding. Let us even know at that summit, we'll see whether we need to even tinker with the laws and so on and so forth. So, Mr. President, I commend the mover, and I support that we deal with this with the urgency and give it the importance that it truly and rightly deserves. Thank you.
My emphasis will be more on the cheap drugs that is being consumed daily. We seem to be hammering on hard drugs, hard drugs. A lot of this younger generation, they get these drugs from the pharmaceutical shops, which is a place where we go to get medical drugs for ourselves. What we used to cure certain illness is what they use now as cheap drugs. The tramadol, the Benelin and codeine, the likes of Refnoil, these are prescription drugs. If we keep on laying emphasis on the hard drugs of cocaine, heroin, we might be missing out the cheap drugs that is even the major danger in the society. So we should find a way, maybe when we come to the prayers, we should find a way to couch it such that the pharmaceutical shops should be held responsible, selling prescription drugs to the younger ones without proper monitoring. If you come to my locality, most of them are sleeping and walking. They will tell you they are high or what. And you see their tongue is blue always. If you ask, what did you take? He will tell you, I took lemon Vicks. It's not lemon Vicks. It's this tramadol they are taking.
That one is 3,000 naira.
3,000 naira.
It's an expensive one, the blue one.
The blue one. So, sir, I think part of our prayers, when we are going to be adopting the prayers, we should look at that school curriculum and also the National Education Agency and the pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria. Recently, we saw in the papers where that the the customs seized a container of tramadol. Who is importing this tramadol? For what? Thank you, sir.
Well, to know the cost of the tramadol, you say it's 3,000 naira. So thank God you are the one that brought the motion. So you have done a lot of research, and you are able to, you know which one is costly and which one is not. But I want to thank all my distinguished colleagues for their contributions. When we go into prayers, you can now look at the additional prayer. I thank you for this motion. There is no doubt that almost every crime in the country today is related to one drug or the other. Even those who they say they are high. The worst one is even the one they do in the open in nightclubs. I don't know whether they call it kisha. Is this shisha? And some will be smoking it and they're passing it around, you know, jotting it up and down. No, it's Babangida that told me. So it's a big problem in the society. So it's good that you brought this up. And I've also heard of the one that are not even drugs. So you have soakaways in your houses. So once in a while, check to be sure that there is no hole in the soakaway. Because I understand that some children will make hole in the soakaway before they step out for nightclub. They will go put their nose in the soakaway and inhale the soakaway. From there, the acid will enter into their brain, and they are already high before leaving the house. So there is a lot has to be done by families if we have to bring this situation under control. And I think it's what Senator Dixon said, that we have reached a point of national emergency. We should convoke a national discourse on narcotics, and then at the end of it, we should come up to this chamber as legislators to formulate policies and possible legislations that can cope this situation and bring sanity to the society. So thank you, gentlemen. Let's go into the prayers. Prayer 1. mandate the Committee on Drugs and Narcotics to engage the NDLEA and NAFDAC to provide updated statistical data on drug abuse in Nigeria. Those in support of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. Amendment, yes. Amendment.
After listening to all contributions, is that firstly, this Senate should call for a declaration of national emergency on narcotics by the head of the federal government, that is the President of the Federal Republic. And secondly, that we convoke. And when you do that, we may not need to take all these most of these things. That's why I'm raising this observation, sir. If we call for a declaration, and if we call for a national summit because of the seriousness of this menace, I don't think without going through that summit we should, what purpose will it serve if we mandate our committee to relate with when we are talking of a bigger summit? That's the point I'm raising.
Senator Babangida, the Senate committees on NDLEA and NAFDAC to liaise with relevant agencies of government to convoke a major narcotics discourse. And thereafter come back with a possible solution on policies and regulations. That's one. Two, he also suggested and moved that we should urge the federal government to declare a state of emergency on drug abuse in the country. That with those two prayers, we will be okay. What's your opinion?
Thank you. No one here can put it more eloquently than the way the Senate President has put it. If I may, we can rely on what you have said. And I adopt it. I adopt what Mr. President has so eloquently enunciated as the two prayers, and I so move in terms, i.e., firstly, that this Senate calls for a declaration of emergency, a national emergency on the issue of drug and narcotics crisis in this country, so that all our national resources can be channeled towards it. Number two, that our relevant committees working with the executive arm should convoke a national conference to bring out all the related issues, working with all the stakeholders, so that we can chart a clear path moving forward in terms of resolution. I so move.
I quite agree with the amendment to the prayer, which will encapsulate all the points we have raised. But having said that, if we are talking of emergency, Mr. President, sir, distinguished colleagues, it must be an emergency. I have not really shared the research I conducted, the amount of money I spent, including the videos containing the deeper problems that drug abuse has brought to Nigeria. Families have been broken. The future of our children is being taken away from us. So, Mr. President, sir, distinguished colleagues, if it is the view that we are treating this as an emergency and we are declaring it as an emergency, I have no problem. We can all take the prayers during the national emergency and the summit that distinguished Seraki Dixon is advancing. Thank you, sirs.
So, formally move a motion. The first motion is that we urge the federal government of Nigeria, we urge our committees on narcotics and NDLEA to work with relevant government agencies to declare a state of emergency on narcotics abuse in the country. The second will be that we convoke an emergency retreat or summit to discuss holistically the way forward on how we can cope this in order not to spoil the future of this country. If those two prayers are well couched and seconded, they will stop at that. So go ahead.
South, I rise to second the amended prayers as moved by distinguished Senator Dixon Seriaki. I so second.
The necessary agencies of government, particularly the federal government of Nigeria, to declare a state of emergency on narcotics abuse in the country. Secondly, that the committees on NDLEA, NAFDAC, should work with relevant agencies of the federal government to immediately convoke a national summit to discuss the state of narcotics abuse and the future of Nigeria. This has already been seconded. Those who are in support of these two prayers say aye. Aye. And those again say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you so much, distinguished colleagues. Looking at the mood of the Senate, I have to be mindful of the mood of the Senate and the fact that some committees have already started deliberations with the relevant MDAs and the Director Generals who were waiting since 2:30 for them. I wish to So this Senate is hereby adjourned to the 18th day of yes, the Senate leader, I think you should help us to stand down the remaining items on the other paper.